the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
It's as
the meme.
The meme, Jon Tayler, the stick poke meme. What could the Rockies do this winter? And if you're the GM, and look, I don't want to put you in that spot where you're the general manager of the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah, why would
Jon
you
Tayler.
wish such an awful thing upon me?
Look, it's a thought exercise. It's, like I said, a safe space. I'm not actually putting you in charge of the Colorado Rockies. I would never, ever put that on your plate.
I appreciate your kindness.
But in this conversation, if you were, because they really haven't done anything, they're clearly the worst team in the NL West. What else is new? But, like, what would you do? Like, what could the Rockies have done to make this a less depressing offseason? And also a realistic one.
I like how we're speaking as if the offseason's already over for the Rockies, because we all kind of know.
I was going to say, we know the offseason.
They're not actually going to do anything.
Like, what are they going to do? Sign Josh Hader? No.
Well, I hadn't realized they re-signed Charlie Blackmon at some point this winter.
Did they really?
Yeah, when I was looking at our free agent tracker on Fangraphs, I saw Charlie Blackmon 1 year, $13 million with the Rockies, and I was kind of like, when, how, why? I went through all the various the journalistic 5 questions. Okay, so first of all, I would not have re-signed Charlie Blackmon, but whatever. That's clearly just a sentimental thing, because this team is more just the vibes of like a bad Hallmark movie just surround this team.
Well, they also probably were surprised that he wanted to stay.
Yeah, it was like, really? You want to keep doing this?
All
sure?
Right.
You know we're going to win like 70 games next year, right?
And he's like, honestly, it's a beautiful park. Love living in Denver. I go skiing, snowboarding. Like, I'm good.
I mean, so assuming that, because it's one thing when you do these exercises, be like, well, if I were the GM of the Colorado Rockies, the first thing I would have done is sign Shohei Ohtani. But that's not realistic, I feel like. I think it's tricky because you look at this roster right now and you look at where the problem spots, or what feel like the problem spots. I think, in terms of production, they got very little last year at shortstop. But that's, Ezequiel Tovar was one of their top prospects. I think you want to give him some time and space to run. Similarly with Nolan Jones, who they got from Cleveland and who was very good for them last year. You want to give him space to see what's there. I think Brenton Doyle is probably never going to be an adequate hitter, but he's a phenomenal defensive center fielder. I think you can live with that for a little bit. I think it's more, if you're looking at the Rockies and if you're kind of assuming, okay, we're stuck with Chris Bryant, we're stuck with Ryan McMahon, we're okay with Brendan Rodgers, and truthfully, I don't actually know that there's a better second baseman available in free. And I'm just going to look at this from a free agency standpoint, because I don't, trade wise, I don't really know what would make the most sense for the Rockies, but I feel like you're probably here looking for a good corner outfield bat, ideally one from the left side who can play a little first base, who can also fill the DH spot, so you're not starting Charlie Blackmon every day. You're looking at the guys who are, I think, honestly, if Doyle were already there, I'd say Cody Bellinger, because of the defense he can play in center, but sticking him in an outfield corner is kind of a waste. You could, to a certain degree, say fuck it and just go with Jorge Soler and just light up the fireworks factory. I think that's probably a viable option.
Fun in Colorado.
Similarly, you could, I think more than anything, I would be going to guys like Teoscar Hernandez and being like, you want a real 1-year pillow contract? Like, come launch balls at Coors for half a season. All you got, you don't have to be a good outfielder. We don't care if you're a good outfielder. You can just come here and rake. I think a guy like that would be an interesting target. I think, and it depends on how much you could catch. I would, Mitch Garver is a guy who would make a lot of sense there. Gary Sanchez. And if I'm the Rockies GM, I think hitting wise, I'm just going for the dudes who hit bombs essentially, regardless of their defensive value for the most part, who can stand in a corner spot or ideally catch at least a few times a week and make it work from there. And otherwise, I'm keeping an eye on my minor leagues and cycling through the young guys that I can. From a pitching standpoint, understanding that nothing functions in Coors Field, I don't know that necessarily going after like Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery necessarily makes a lot of sense. I'd be really curious to see, if you want to try to operate from, well, let's get guys who keep the ball on the ground. Marcus Stroman is obviously the ideal candidate in that category. I'm not sure how good a fit he would be in Colorado. I have no idea if he'd even really be interested, but that's a possibility. If the Royals hadn't grabbed him, Michael Wacha, I think, would have been an interesting option, although he also might have given up 900 home runs in Coors next year. Similarly, I think now he's already on the Reds. I think, this is back on the hitting side. I think Heimer Candelario also would have been a nice potential addition for the Rockies as well. it's just tough though. And I think if you're the Rockies, or if I were in charge of the Rockies and you said you get to make one big marquee splash signing, as dumb as it might sound, it's probably Josh Hader.
Yeah.
Because that bullpen is horrible. And granted, it doesn't really make sense because signing a really, really good closer for a team that won like 65 games last year is a horrible misuse of resources in every way, shape, and form.
But
if you combine that with, I think, enough other supplementary moves, again, if you're interested in like the Soler, Teoscar, Gary Sanchez, Mitch Garver, Martinez, just load up on power bat as much as you can, where you can. Because again, Bellinger is wasted in a corner, and I don't know you want to plug him back at first base, given you already got Chris Bryant to work with. Similarly with Matt Chapman, you've got Ryan McMahon at third base. And granted, if I could, I would just make those two guys vanish off the roster and replace them. But if it's not really possible for you to go after the top end of the market, you might as well load up on as many mid-tier hitters as you can on reasonable, like 2 or 3 year short-term deals. Spend the money on the kind of elite pitching you need in order to succeed, especially when you consider, too, half the games for Colorado plays have to be out of Coors. So having good pitching outside of Coors also would be very useful. And a guy like Hader, who has the kind of big-time strikeout stuff you need for that to work, I think would be, again, not the greatest use of resources, but if I'm only going to get one big splash, that might be the one I target. And then you just kind of try to load up too on those more veteran pitching options who can give you innings more than anything. Like a guy like Stroman who can give you 6 on the regular, or a guy like maybe Seth Lugo, although I can't remember if he's a fly ball or ground ball pitcher. So he might either be a great fit or a horrible fit. But it's just the thing that's tough about the Rockies is just trying to build around Coors, so to speak, and just having to kind of mold your entire philosophy to the whims of a ballpark. But I think what Colorado chooses to do instead, which is to say nothing, it benefits no one. It puts the team in a position where there's just, like you said, this is already the worst team in the NL West, and there's not any real debate on that one. It lowers the possibility of doing any better, of taking advantage of something teams falling apart. You put yourself in a no-win spot just right from the get-go. To say nothing of, you then bring up young players into an environment that's already bad, where they're already being pressured essentially to do too much. Instead of having a system in place where it's, hey, we've got these guys who can do the heavy lifting. Now we bring the kids up to see if we can catch some lightning in a bottle, so to speak. But I don't know. I feel like I kind of like that for this exercise. You just started with the single most difficult team right off the bat, non-Oakland A's division. So. But I think, I don't know. I mean, what would you do if someone gave you this absolute mess of a roster to try to figure out?
Look,
besides
John,
resign, obviously.
What's funny? I just look at this and I'm like, look, when would you guess was the last time the Rockies won more than 80 games, or more than 85, or let's do more than 87 games, John?
Ooh, I really should know this. 2016.
Very close. 2018. They won 91.
I was going to say, I know there was 1 year randomly in there in the last decade where they just like ripped off an 85+ win season. And I think it was the year Kyle Freeland was really good. It might have been the last like Troy Tulowitzki season. Or was he already on the Blue Jays by that point?
I think he was on the Blue Jays at that point.
But it was like
Cargo was there.
Okay. So yeah, that felt right to me. Was somewhere in that kind of back half of the 2010s. But yeah, it's been a while since the Rockies have been relevant.
But you go through it, and then it's another 10 years, 92 wins in 09.
Yes.
And then 07, you get 90. And then it's just awful.
Look,
the rest of the time I've been alive, John. So it's like, this is just part of the deal.
Yeah, it has not been a competently run team for any extended stretch. It's been a poorly run team with intermittent bursts of success based on either all the young talent coalescing in one space at once by both design and happenstance, a la the Royals in 2015, or you just randomly go like 25-2 in the months of September and October, like the 07 Rockies did. You just go full this year's Diamondbacks. But yeah,
they should just have one of the best farm systems in baseball, and they just don't.
Well, no, because this is just, like I said, it's not a competently run team. There's not a team with a plan. The player development there is terrible.
Yep.
And again, I acknowledge for the 3 Rockies fans listening to this, that this is the hardest job in Major League Baseball, is making a team function that has to play half its games at altitude. It's insane how difficult that is to do. But that doesn't excuse the fact that it's been 30 years now of Rockies baseball in Denver. And there has been no point in that stretch in time where it's looked like this team had any real clue what it was doing. Again, except for those aforementioned like little the oases in the desert. You know, those little did you say hamlets? That's
blips.
Blips. I like that too. These little blips amidst long fallow stretches. So and again, what is what is the constant there? Ownership. It is ownership. It is the Monfort family. It's, when I've said before that's like, bad teams stay bad teams if they have bad owners. There's just no way around a bad owner. You cannot do anything about it. That's why I remain so down on the Pirates. It's why, I remain so down on whatever's going on with the A's. It's why I remain down on the Rockies. There's just nothing you can do about it unless those, and particularly, and I can't believe that this is only the first time we're mentioning them, given that we spent like 20 minutes talking about Ohtani, the Los Angeles Angels, who I love that they seem to have no plan in place. Like, they just didn't seem to have any interest in trying to retain Shohei Ohtani, despite the fact that it did seem at points like he was actually considering staying.
Yeah.
Like, all they would have really had to do is be like, hey, we're, essentially, we'll do better. We promise we will do better. And so they're just like, you know what? It's not worth the effort.
No.
We'd rather just go back to signing Hunter Renfroe if we can do that. And then, they didn't even do that. We'd rather just be the weirdos who just sign middle relievers all off season.
Well, I will say the one thing that precluded them from doing that is there's no way Artie Moreno signs off on that kind of contract.
Well, and that's the thing, like, because he's a terrible owner. He's a terrible owner who does not know how to make the best of the situation he's got, or how to leverage effectively the money he has in whatever degree he has it. Yes, the Rockies are the same. It's a team owned by people who don't know what they're doing, who think they know what they're doing, which is the most toxic combination possible. And until and unless that changes, nothing else will in Colorado.
No. I love this headline from Purple Row. Affected by altitude, all I want for Christmas is the Rockies to do something.
That's pretty much it. I mean, that's the thing. And it's, again,
Being a Rockies
the moves
fan,
I'm
man.
talking about, aside from Hader, are not big moves. Again, It's like Jorge Soler, Teoscar Hernandez. These are not. This is not 9-year deals at $150 million a piece. Soler might get like a 2-year, $24 million deal. That's it. That's not a lot. The Rockies don't have a particularly big payroll either. But again, they just choose to spend their money stupidly too. I mean, they locked up Ryan McMahon for no reason. And now it comes a winter where they could easily go get Matt Chapman, who would be a perfect fit in Colorado for a variety of reasons. But they can't do it because instead they're paying Ryan McMahon to do what he does, which is to say be a 2-WAR player for the rest of eternity. It's just not a smart team. It is not they do things for whatever reason they do them, and then you're just constantly trying to decide what you want to do with this roster to make it better. You have to be like, okay, well, first I have to undo like 9 or 10 different things that the previous GM did, or that ownership essentially pushed them into doing. Then I can start like building on it. It's one of those situations where like you buy a house where it's like, oh, it's a fixer upper. It's like, no, it's rotten in the foundation. The best thing to do is just tear it down and completely start over. But again, for the 3 Rockies fans listening, I'm sorry. Like this team is just, it's not even just a team, because it's not really fair to the guys on the field. Like they're all trying their best. It's just a brain dead organization, when it comes to putting it together.
Go Rockies, man.
Go Rockies.
Final thing here on tonight's show, John. The most interesting free agent name still available that you've been thinking about, that you're fascinated to see where they end up, is who?
I think Bellinger, in part because he's just a fascinating free agent to me. You're either getting an MVP or a dude where you're getting Jason Hayward 2.0. It's one or the other. I think Snell, similarly on the pitching side, where I wrote his player comment for this year's for next year's upcoming BP annual, and if you're the
nicely done, nephew. the Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.